You feel that the jazz audience in Lagos is growing, or
jazz,
even in Nigeria?
yes, there is. But apart from the fact growing, I don't know enough to say that it's growing, but there is an extensive jazz public in Lagos.
Community type.
Yeah, you see, people tend to say people don't listen to jazz in Lagos. That's not true. That's not true. You see, I keep telling people, 90% or more of top executives in Lagos have been to school outside of Nigeria. They lived in the States, they lived in England, they've been exposed to the jazz in those countries. They come back and they hunger for jazz, and there's nobody giving it to them because all the clubs think that they must do one thing that's not that, because they say nobody listens to jazz. I remember, you know, I worked a lot with OJB, and while I used to be at that studio a lot, I recorded a lot of my stuff there as well. And what used to happen, they would always say, people always say, that stuff you doing, it won't sell. Nobody, you know, the youth, they don't care about all this kind of stuff. Everything is hip hop, you know, that's what they've been saying. And I remember nights because we usually work in the day, and at night when the hip hop artists would come to do their recordings with some of the, you know, there's the upcoming guys, you know, they come in the night because it was easier for them to get work done in the night. And I'd be sitting away from the studio with a boombox, kind of listening to the stuff that I had recorded in the day and stuff, you know, trying to see what needs to be changed and all that. And invariably, these kids would come and say, "Excuse me, sir, who's been playing our music? I would love to know, is it possible for us to sample?" You know, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I realized that all this stuff that people be saying all the time, that nobody listens. No, everybody listens. Everybody listens, but producers and marketers, not just in Nigeria, generally, because I remember in the initial stages of being in Vienna, we had to face that problem too. Producers and marketers, they like to jump on a bandwagon. For example, if, let's just go local, Wizkid is happening. Wizkid is making songs after songs after song, and they're all being hits. So any artist that comes to a producer now, the producer wants to give him a beat that sounds
like Wizkid,
like Wizkid, because he thinks that would sell. If Wizkid did not do Wizkid, he would not have been successful.
Of course.
You had to do Wizkid to become successful.
Yes.
So you do John or Muiwa or whatever your name is, do that and be successful at doing that. But because once you're trying to walk behind Wizkid or walk in Wizkid or Davido's shadow, for example, you just be there.
Yes.
You know, because you'll have to wait for Davido to make the next step before you know what the next step is.
Precisely.
But if you go on your own road, you make your next step.
That's very, very true.
Yeah, but
that's,
you know, so that's the problem with, and it's an international problem. That's what happens in the music industry. Somebody makes a hit and they turn that into a template and expect that or determine that everybody, if that was true, if that were to be true, that there was a template to making hit music, how come the only artist that Kenny had that blew the way Two-Face blew was Two-Face?
True.
If there was a template, Kenny had like 10 artists. No other one made any real impact. Two-Face is today all over the world still.
Yes.
How many years later? So there's no template. You can't. Music and art in general is a personal thing. People relate to something for different reasons. They might relate to the same thing. They might fall in love with the same thing, but for all different reasons.
Okay.
That's what I believe anyway. So that's why I try to keep doing what I do, because I keep telling people when they ask me, "Why are you so stubborn?" I say, no, it's not about being stubborn. I just know that I'm not unique. And so if there's something that I like, there are other people out there that like it too.
Of course.
So I need to just find those people. That's all.
Very true.
And so if you just believe that you could follow in a thing, a style, you get swallowed up by the person that innovated the style. You're always in the shadow. So, and I mean, like George Benson said, I promised myself never to walk in anyone's shadow.
Oh yes, of course, most definitely. Do you feel that jazz is literally the bed of all types of music that's been created, that's being created on a regular basis?
No, I wouldn't go as far as saying that. I wouldn't go as far as saying that because what I would say in terms of what you're talking about is that the African rhythm, the 4/4 rhythm is actually what it is. That everything, if you listen to jazz, is either 4 or 6. That's African. You listen to hip hop, it's usually 4. It might be a couple of 6s, like Digable Planets might do something in 6. But basically, it's 4. And so it all comes from basically somewhere from African rhythm. But how it has dispersed itself, it's a different story, you know, because okay, jazz came about when slaves were freed and racism was still rampant, but not, I mean, you know what I'm saying. So
it was beginning to be frowned upon.
When people started, when the slaves, ex-slaves, former slaves started socializing or playing music together with the European in America, what developed out of that was jazz. When the same thing happened in South America, what happened out of it? What came out of it was probably salsa or something like that. What happened when it started happening in America? I mean, in the Caribbean, it was calypso. And because all it was is that the African drum and African ideas of music and African rhythms started to intermingle with European influences. And you know, in Europe they have all these different countries, and so they had different cultures slightly. And so when the African culture got mixed with probably a Spanish culture or a Portuguese culture or a British culture, in those different areas, the music would have taken a slightly different dimension. But if you look at it, they're all in 4/4 timing. They're all doing the same thing, basically. You know, just expressing it a little bit differently.
And so in a different manner,
so
depending on what area.
So I wouldn't say that jazz is the bed, but I would say that the rhythms that came out of Africa with slavery and the discovery of the New World and people flock into the New World. Yes. That's where the bed of everything that we're doing today is.
Okay. So how would you say it's evolving? From, let's say, if you looked at jazz 10 years ago and jazz now, how has it changed?
Basically, 10 years ago is, for me, a little bit too short.
Okay, let's go back further then.
No, because, you know, electronic and digital capabilities now have had profound effect on what is happening in jazz. In fact, in all music forms, but jazz, as we're talking about jazz, like for example, okay, look at Miles. If you listen to Miles in the 40s, listen to Miles in the 50s, listen to Miles in the 60s, the thread starts changing with Bitches Brew because it's becoming electric. Because before then, okay, he was doing different things, yeah, but it was all basically the same thing in the sense of being acoustic and you know. But then from the 60s, he started getting into the electronic instruments, for example. And then there was Bitches Brew, and that blew everybody's mind. And I remember listening to it and not knowing what I was listening to. I couldn't understand what they were doing. And I was thinking, wow. Anyway, but you know, coming up. Then you look at what Miles was doing in the last, say, 10, 20 years of his life. I mean, it's amazing. But you see, he always had that innovation. Yes. Which is what jazz is all about. Jazz is, for me, is basically innovation. You have to be creative. You have to keep that element of creativity. That, to me, in fact, that's not just jazz. That's art. Of course. That's what art is. And I mean, if you're not able to keep that innovative spirit in what you're doing, then you're not achieving anything as far as I'm concerned.
You need to be able to keep the art alive, basically, and keep on
and
nourishing
not sleep with it. And I think that there are quite a few people. Herbie Hancock is also very dynamic in terms of development, with moving with the times and all that, you know. But here, people still tend to think of jazz as that boring bebop, which I never found bebop to be boring.
Okay.
But you know, that's the thing. And so that's why there's a little bit of difficulty in getting jazz into the mainstream of the Nigerian entertainment scene. But it is a niche market in Nigeria. It is a niche audience, but it's not a small niche audience. I think fantastic.
All right, fantastic. So, I mean, that's the way you've seen it evolve, and then, and because you say that it has a lot of, because of the digital age, it's moving forward. So where do you envision jazz to be? Give it like another 50 years.
You see, that's a difficult question to answer, because that also depends not only on what the artists do or plan or have in mind, but also what technology, how the way technology will develop. You know, because the things that what technology has become today, or what it has done to music today, the possibilities that it has opened to music and musicians today. 20 years ago, we couldn't imagine that those things would be happening.
Of course.
You know, so we never knew what the computer would, how the computer would affect music. And I mean, so 50 years, man, you know, there's no many madmen there are in the laboratories.
You just don't know what's going to happen.
What's going to come out, man. You might just find yourself coming to one gig one day and just having to do this, and then everything happens. You just think it. You just think it.
That would be amazing. That would be pretty amazing. That would be pretty amazing. Okay, Brian. So basically, now the way where to look at, like for example, you say you use a lot of social media to get your music out there. What, for example, if I were to go search on YouTube, do you have a YouTube channel? So what's it called?
Well, actually, because I'm such a dullard when it comes to using all these platforms, my YouTube channels, I've had 3, and they somehow always get messed up. So now I just use the one that bears my name, which is Ibrahim Cox.
Ibrahim Cox.
Yes. Okay. That's all it is. And then there's one I ran into by accident. I tried to Google something and it came up. It's still up there. It's called Urban Underground, but I can't access it properly, so I don't change the stuff.
Okay.
But that's
so Ibraham Cox is what to look for.
That's the one that's
what to look out for, basically.
On Facebook, there's Brian Electric Bassist.
Okay.
On Reverb Nation, there's also Brian Electric Bassist, and on SoundCloud, there's also Brian Electric Bassist. Okay, that's fantastic.
So apart from the social media aspects, we can also look out for you at the Lagos International Jazz.
I hope that becomes the
okay. Well, yes,
Satchmo's on the 2nd. Then generally,
Lagos Jazz Series, of course.
Lagos Jazz Series. That's usually in November, and I'm still talking to what you're trying to say.
I'm sure everything will come together.
By the grace of God.
And Brian, thank you very much.
Thank you for having
being
me.
on
Thank
set
you
with
for
us
having me.
today.
It was fun.
It was very enlightening, to be honest
fun.
with you, talking about the jazz scene.
Really enjoyed looking at the smile while we were talking. It was inspiring.
Thank you very much. All right, guys. I am Missy Molu, and this, of course, is Brian, the electric bassist. We shall be back in just a few, so keep it locked on to Pulse TV Live.